In this session, we have to talk about the role of journalism in democracy. Let's look at primarily what are the roles that journalism performs when we talk about a vibrant democracy or the growth of a vibrant democracy. Once citizens choose their government representatives, they must make sure they fulfill its promises of campaign, work for benefit of society, and respect the law. As citizens cannot be in direct contact with their representatives all the time, news media work as their eyes and voices. Therefore, freedom of expression is fundamental for journalists to fulfill their role as intermediaries. So, three things that we need to look at here is one, that there is a public or the consumers who rightfully voted political representatives or elected political representatives to the upper house with this sort of an assumption that they are going to serve the society or serve those people within the society. Then there are those representatives who go on from us because they're elected ones. We follow an electoral system. If you look at the ratio of the two, if you look at the number of people who are represented and the number of people who are helping them become elected representatives, the ratio is staggering, right? There are more consumers than there are producers. The primary, to bring it down to the very fundamental level, there are more consumers, there are less producers. And producers can easily connect back to the consumers. But with the moment consumers want to connect to producers, it becomes a challenge. So here in our case also, you can't walk into a MLA's house or MP's house and start sharing your problems or your community's problems. So what do you do in the process? You require some sort of a via media through which these people cannot be, could be reached out. If you have issues and concerns to share, what you need to do is you need to raise your issues or point your issues through a certain medium, the people. And this medium is journalism. So what the world of journalism does essentially is it works as a bridge between the elected representatives, those who are at the helm of the power, and the people, you and me, the consumers, or the general public, who help them reach that place. So media's role becomes significant by voicing out opinions of people or the public who might not be in a stage to reach out to the people who are powerful or in powerful political positions. In this sort of a scenario, what is crucial is that the media or the journalistic community have one most vital thing, which is called the freedom of expression. They should be freed to represent the matter of the public. They should be free to write, report, discuss, share about everything that is happening with the public. And the public in turn must also get a scope to know about what is happening at other spaces, other domestic spaces, as well as international spaces. As we speak, there are news events that are occurring, across. And it is practically impossible for all of us to tap into every kind of information that translates. Every kind of events that translates as information. Things that are happening all across the world at this point in time. Would it be possible for us to tap into it without a particular medium? That's the reason why journalism is there, because it offers us some sort of an insight into that informational network, into that world of information, through the newspapers, through television channels, through radio, through films, documentaries, what you do is you get a world view. You get a perspective about the events that is happening across the world. So unless media decides to offer, unless journalists decide to offer those kind of content to you, how do you gain knowledge or insight into this? So freedom of expression and a larger battle against censorship is very crucial when we talk about the growth of a healthy democracy. Are we good? The goal of journalism in a democracy is to improve social conditions of the people. Our living conditions, our existing living conditions must change. Okay, because the society is dynamic in nature, it is not static. Because it is not static and then it's dynamic in nature, we must evolve accordingly. And our social conditions as community of individuals must also undergo some sort of change. And journalism plays a very vital role in improving the social conditions of people. Point is, how does it do so? What it does is by becoming the free press. When you say free press, what I'm referring to is an independent body, an independent organization, an independent institution called journalism, which is devoid of any kind of governmental or any kind of institutional influences and doesn't get corrupt because of political interests that they have. They can definitely contribute to the freedom of individuals in society. And when I say freedom of individuals, I'm referring to freedom in a rather absolute sense. One of the points that I kind of proved upon yesterday, touched upon, is very vital to this conversation. Try to understand. We have gained independence for such a long period of time, since such a long period of time. But as a community, are we free? And when I talk about communities, I'm talking about communities across. I'm talking about religious communities, I'm talking about sexual minorities, I'm talking about caste minorities, or majorities for that matter. I'm talking about gender-based segregations. I'm talking about geographies within this particular country. So when you look at these various junctures of the population, as a collective consensus, can we agree that we have reached the stage where we are truly free in this independent nation? Because technically speaking, we are an independent nation. But in this independent nation, how much of independence of thought, values, and action you have? So what media could do is ask this kind of very pertinent questions to help improve the socio-political and economic conditions of the communities. Are we good? And this is called public journalism or civic journalism. This is called public journalism or civic journalism because it is catering to the public. It is catering to the civic society or the civic citizenry, as we understand. The goal of public journalism, rather than serving the interest of an elite community is the powerful community, the community who has access to finance, access to power, access to politics. They are the ones who primarily are the ruling community, if we say so. The politicians, the bureaucrats, the military, the economic advisory, people who take decisions, who are decision makers, people who take decisions on all our behalf. Our policy makers, they are the ones who are the social elite, political elite, economic elite of the society. So the goal of public journalism is not to serve them or to give in to something called corporate hegemony. What is corporate hegemony? When corporations, factories, big conglomerates, okay, play a very decisive role in the control of power. There's always a subconscious power dynamic and a very visible power dynamic that exists between those people who have and those people who have not. Right? I'm talking it from an economic point of view. The rich versus the poor binary, if you see, those people who have not, they just don't lack money. They lack everything else as well that comes along with the money. The respect that they should get as human beings and as social beings. How often we treat a beggar equally? We don't do so. It's not a part of our subconscious psyche. So when those people who are controlling finance through production, through distribution, through channels, they're the ones who are also calling shots. Tomorrow, if the biggest telecom giant of this country decides to come up with a new policy, new telecom policy, what choices do we have but not to accept that? As consumers, do we have a choice to protest? At best, we can protest. How would that help? That doesn't help. So tomorrow, if those companies, I just gave you an example of telecom, it can be across sectors. So media's job is not to fall into the trap of corporate hegemony. So hegemony is the word that could be used alternatively as a theoretical proposition instead of calling it control. So when you say something is hegemonic, which means it is all encompassing in terms of control and distribution. I work as a regulator of information. Information which is favorable to me, I'll only allow the media to publish that, and something that is against the grains or the philosophy or the ethos of my company, I won't let it run in the media house. Which is one of the reasons why it's about time we start paying for journalism. Have a paid system or a subscription model to contribute to free journalism from the shackles of politics and the corporate mafia, who almost control. We'll come into it a little later part. So if you want public journalism to significantly contribute to the culture of a growing democracy or an evolving democracy like ours, it is crucial that as civil society members, we understand the value of public journalism and start paying both attention as well as money so that these media houses can stay independent, organize themselves, and periodically contribute content which is necessary for us to stay cognitively viable at the first place. Citizens are active participants in public journalism. How? How do we contribute to public journalism? We contribute to public journalism by our engagement, by constantly consuming that kind of content, by talking about it, by sharing, by creating and recreating dialogical spaces where exchange of ideas, flow of information remains as the most vital point of the democracy. And where news is the product of interaction between private, public, and state sectors. I'm sure you understand the differences between private, public sectors of the government. Right. All right. So one media theorist named Stephen Morris, in his book Objectivity in Journalism, identifies three key aspects to address the essential idea of journalistic objectivity. Why is it that I'm talking about journalistic objectivity suddenly? Why is it important? Journalistic objectivity is important to the growth of democracy because you can look at objectivity as a socially evolving value system. That you can create a rationale for yourself. As an individual, I can create a rationale for myself, whether to believe this information whether to buy into that information or not. The moment I accept it, the moment I accept something, which means I have consciously accepted it, right? Nobody has put pressure on me to believe in a particular idea or not. It is my cognitive understanding of a particular thing. It could be event, people, anything, ideologies, anything. If you believe in something, if you believe in anything for that matter, it can be literally anything. You go on to defend that in public spaces, in your mind as well. I'll give you a small example, and which is not directly connected to journalistic objectivity, but is vital for objectivity, to understand objectivity. Okay, let me ask you a question. This is for the offline participants. How many of you have seen the film Kabir Singh or Arjun Reddy? 3, 4, 5. Okay. And what do you think about it? Just give me brief because I need to come back. Realistic? Okay. Somebody else? How many of you believe in the film? You believe in the moral of the film? Okay. And you also agree to him, whatever he's saying? You said you believed in the realism of the film. Okay. And what about others? Do you agree, disagree? Agree? All of you agree to whatever was shown in the film? Not? No, not everything. I'm talking about generally what is your reception of the film. So when you say that I said, do you believe in the film? When I say you believe in the film, what I want to know is whether you accept the film as the first thing. So that is what I'm saying. So when you say that I accept the film, which means somewhere you are being objective regarding the reception. This is talking less about the film. It is talking more about you. So when I ask you this question that whether you believe in X as a product, and you say that, yeah, we like this. You found it realistic. You found the ending to be optimistic or something where he has some takeaway. Now, if I have to talk for myself, I completely disagree with the film. Not with the making, or I find the very basic rationale of the film very flawed. But that is my thing. Understand that cultural products, if we talk about film as a cultural product, products are subjective in nature. Two people who are deeply in love, almost believing in themselves, can have extremely contradictory take on the same cultural product they're consuming. Got the point? So me and my partner, both of us watch this film. He can completely agree, I can completely disagree. Though we completely agree with the whole idea, because it is a, it's a product of love, about love. So our idea about love could have similar wavelength, but our understanding of another product would be different. And in this case, whatever is your stand is an objective stand. The moment I'm assessing the product, it becomes subjective. The moment I'm assessing individuals, it becomes objective. Are we clear? Sorry, I just took a little detour. Sorry? Yeah. So it's primarily that. That when you're judging individuals, you're talking about objectivity. Whether you believe, whether you do not believe. When you talk about a product, it all of a sudden becomes subjective. So in such sort of a scenario, how do we arrive at journalistic objectivity? Journalism is the product. Journalists are not. Are we good? The nature of journalism could be subjective. Those people who are doing journalism need to have an objective standpoint about issues. Is it clear? So what are the three aspects that Steve Moran talks about? Steve Moran talks about. First is values. Second is process. Third is language. Values, process, language. Values accounting for journalistic values. Processes accounting for journalistic processes. Languages accounting for journalistic language. What it generally means, let's expand and look at it. While there are numerous values that generally accompany objectivity, Morris points to three that seem to safely make it to the list, as identified by another theorist called Everett Dennis. You refer to the slide, you know. What does Everett Dennis talk about? The values associated, journalistic values associated with objectivity. First is separating facts from opinion. Somebody the other day was asking, when I was discussing about the binary of news versus views, somebody was asking that is it okay for journalists to be opinionated? That was one of the questions that emerged in the other class. And I told that it's okay to have opinions as long as they are not making it to the news headlines. All of us have opinions. Tomorrow, if you are saying that you do not have opinions, then you are lying. All of us have opinion about everything on the earth. That's a problem. That has practically become a problem. Because things we know about and we do not know about, we talk about them with equal confidence. And that creates a lot of chaos and confusion. If I don't have a field of expertise, I would rather leave it and walk away. Or humbly listen to other people who have something significant to contribute or share. What is happening instead? I am contributing to the already existing noise. Look at what is happening at the 7 p.m. primetime news. In those small boxes that you see, people outscream each other. The only objective that is fulfilled is how the decibel goes up and up and up. Is there any takeaway at 9 p.m.? I'm not talking about everybody arriving at a consensus. You cannot. You can agree to disagree. Is there a healthy debate that goes on? Rarely so. Because nobody is ready to give another person an opportunity to talk. They all feel very privileged to be there in that 3-inch cubicle and cram whatever they have. What they do talk about are opinion. Journalists are not supposed to offer opinion in their story unless you are editorializing the content. In the editorial page, it's the institutional ideology, is the institutional opinion or take on a particular case that is published. All of you are familiar with the editorial page of a newspaper, which comes right in the center, which is one of the most complex things to read, which is what you skip most of the time, telling that it is boring, high, raw content. I'm interested in gossip. I'm interested in cinema. I'm interested in cricket. I'm interested in what is happening in Tollywood town. Instead of looking at critical issues, essays, journalistic pieces, those are opinion. So you have an editorial page and you have an op-ed page, which is the open editorial page, where experts, field experts, try to offer their insights into different issues, contemporary issues. Apart from those two pages, rest everything that goes into the newspaper are primarily reporters. And they should be based on fact. So you can be journalistically objective only when you start valuing this idea of how fact could be separated from opinion and why facts should get primacy over opinion. I'm not interested to know what is written in this. I pick up a newspaper to know about the world, not about world views. Understand the difference between world and world views. When we talk about world views, it becomes opinionated. It is about people. When I talk about world, I'm talking about events, which I'm curious about. That serves my information thirst. I want to know more about what is happening across the world. That's why I picked up the newspaper. I want to know more about what is happening across the world. That's why I switch on the television channel. I'm not interested in 40 idiots screaming at the top of their voice at the same time, not allowing each other an iota of respect or space to make a point. This is what news primetime debates has always has been about. It was not always like that. But over a period of time, all thanks to aggressive and competitive journalism, in the name of competitive journalism, this is what is being offered. Second point is presenting an emotionally detached view of the news. Why is it important to have emotionally detached view of the news? Things that has happened affect us. It has a direct impact. And many a times it could elicit some sort of, emotion within us. You go to a crash site where 20 people are like bodies shivered and stuff like that. And if you get to know that somewhere few of them are related to you, it's very natural for you to break down. But you can only do so at a state of recovery. You can only produce journalistic content at a state of recovery, not before that. Then striving for fairness and balance. Fairness and balance are two crucial, significant areas to look at when you are producing journalistic content. Fairness in terms of representation, whatever matter you are representing, are you being fair with the content? Then balance, where you are trying to maintain a healthy equation between two different sides of a story that you are examining. Because there could be antagonistic point of views as well. So when you are reporting, your things should be extremely balanced in nature. Your story should be balanced in nature. It must give the audiences or the readers a perspective of a holistic perspective about all the people who are involved in that story. Next part is the process. Process refers to the collective practices of journalists and editors that provide epistemic and procedural objectivity. What is epistemic and procedural objectivity? Epistemic and procedural objectivity refers to the knowledge system that is created and the process where objectivity must be followed. As journalist, you commit to the verification of truth. Truth which is close to journalistic assessment, close to the event. One of the crucial objective methods of assessing truth is by putting facts together. Remember, you are contributing to a larger knowledge base. What you are writing today could become a historical material of research tomorrow. Tomorrow, if I am doing archival research, I might pull out those stories and use them in a certain context or perspective to put my arguments forward if I am a researcher. If you have not represented facts properly, if you have not argued in a holistic manner, if you have not been truthful to the nature of that story, then somewhere you are losing out in the process. Whatever you are producing cannot be used as a referential material because I doubt objectivity. I doubt your engagement with understanding the truth of that story. While specific processes may not be identified across various media, publications and forms of journalism, they all represent the application of objectivity to the activities of reporting and editing. So primarily what it means is through reporting and editing, this thing could be done. Lastly, the language of objective journalism plays a critical role in convincing the readers that the account can be trusted because it is unadorned. This involves using a rhetorical style that clearly, concisely, and accurately details events, facts, details. Remember, you're not writing a literature book. You're neither writing a novel or a film screenplay. You are merely stating facts, what has happened. Your job as a journalist is restricted to that much. Gather data, collect data, go to the field, collect data, come back, compile the data and put it forward. So what you must avoid is the subjective language, which could be misleading, which could be confusing. You have data, put them together in the format, leave it. As journalist, that is your job. You do that successfully for 20 years, you become a successful journalist. While having your opinions all the way. Do you think I don't have opinions? Don't you think you don't have opinions? Do you wake up every morning to greet people in the most natural sense? We don't. We have our up days and down days. Similarly, we have opinions and news with us. The only thing that must go out is facts. So stay rhetorical to the style and structure of presentation. When I'm talking about rhetorical, present things as it is. That's it. Further, as journalists generally try to respect the invisible frame, that is their work in framing a story should be unobservable to readers. How I'm framing the story must not come across to the reader. They need not get to know what is my construction style. They need to have the end product, and that end product should be truthful to the nature of the story. Period. Use a language which is neutral enough so that people don't hold dictionaries, start looking for things. Connote things which are crucial to the story. Remember, you are the one who is shaping that story, giving that incident and event some sort of a shape in the newspaper or magazine. Whatever you write is crucial because people are going to consume the same thing. So if the story doesn't unfold independently, when I say independently, should be devoid of fear and favor, should be devoid of any kind of extra influences. You should not write the story because you are pressurized to write so. Then you are compromising on the ethics of the profession. Yeah. One of the most fundamental obstacles for objective journalism is simply that people have an incredibly wide range of worldviews. Something that I was talking about, because there are too many worldviews. Everybody has different opinions on things, right? The interpretations might not be justified. We cannot evaluate the interpretations because each of us would have a different take. I say I completely disagree with a project. You say you completely agree with the project. There's somebody who in the middle says, I agree partly, I disagree partly. I don't know, maybe it is good. I like the film. Is it possible to like a film without believing the film? That's a question left to you. Because there is plurality of worldviews in any given society, this brings us to two issues that must be resolved. Okay, first one is legitimacy. In a democracy, political power is always the power of the people as a collective body. How can it be legitimate for democratic people to coerce all citizens to follow just one law? given that citizens will inevitably hold to different worldviews. Don't you find it ironical